Students will work online. More of the students will telecommute. They'll get their education and work requirements simultaneously in some senses. So I just think we need to challenge ourselves to really understand who our students are today and who are the diversity of people that are going to provide the leadership to meet the President's 2020 goals. So that's why I was sort of counting up, how diverse is this audience? Does this audience understand who the students are today? And is there a disconnect between the policymakers and the educators and the kinds of learning that are going on that I think was so well articulated by the little baby that was up on the screen, using a two-way video to connect with parents and grandparents and school so early on. I kind of laughed to myself when I saw that slide for those of you who were in the prior session, because I had just come off of a meeting in Paris of OECD, and I had to lead the early childhood conversation, talk about what we were doing in the Obama administration for early learning, which is a very exciting proposal of the President's that would, for the first time, bring $8 billion into a fund that we would support with Health and Human Services to really upload the best practices, quality programs, and ways that we can improve early learning experiences so children are ready to learn in kindergarten. That is critical when you have over a third of the students not ready for kindergarten, and you have 90% of childcare taking place in families across America, rural, urban, suburban. And, if those of you are here from the technology development world, please help us think about that. I think you'll hear people like me and many of my colleagues in the Obama administration who have just come in trying to think about the population in new and different ways and really trying to connect early learning, K-12, higher education, and the workforce in our conversations so that, and we know very well that all of those parts make a whole, and all of those wholes will make a competitive, highly educated country as our President wants in 2020. So now I'll talk about my real speech. But those are just some early thoughts I had saying, how do we really mobilize and how do we get the representation of our students sort of into our mindset that our students really are digital natives now. They will be increasingly digital natives, but frankly, the digital divide is alive and well. I go to rural America, I go to Morocco, it doesn't matter. There are thousands, hundreds of thousands of people that have little or no access to technology. And one of the challenges that we have at the federal and state and local levels is, how can we get these tools into the hands of everyone? I go back to a little best practice in El Paso in a third grade class in a public school, where the idea was that every one of those families would get a computer, that was a fundamental expectation, but that they would also get training with that technology and they would also get support. I think a lot of times we disconnect. I went to the Jemez Reservation. I saw a brand new computer sitting in a closet. I saw software. I didn't see any training. The teachers didn't know how to use it. The kids were on cell phones. So there was a disconnect, and I think the digital divide is alive and well here in this country and throughout the world, and I think we have some real opportunities in education, higher education, and in the workforce and all the companies that are represented here to really help us think about how we're going to make technology solutions available to everyone. It should just be part of the standard way we do business in education. It isn't. And we've got to be much smarter about getting the tools and the new tools, as well as the sort of the standard tools. I mean, why doesn't everyone have a laptop? Communities need to be asking that question. We need to ask chambers of commerces and mayors and school boards and city councils, how can you help us work together to get the basic tools into the hands of every family, and then ramp up to the more elegant tools that are coming out and the applications that you'll see. As if you watched CNN this morning, you saw an iPhone application that is actually lifting off a mini helicopter and zooming it around and pulling it apart and so forth. And I looked at that this morning on the news, and I thought, this should be part of what we teach in computer science and basic science classes in K-12. And it's not there yet. We have a long way to go. So I've been really listening and learning. I've only been in this position for 6 months, so there's a lot that I don't know about not only the federal government, but about all the pieces that need to fit together to go forward. And I think one thing you'll find in the new administration is a real desire to listen to the best ideas and to look at and shine a spotlight on the best practices and figure out what works and how to play a role in scaling what works and using federal funds to create the incentives and the competitions that will yield us the strategies to bring America to, in the short run, the president's 2020 goal, but in the long run, we have an undereducated public in America. We are not going to be first in the world. We're not going to be the most competitive. We're not going to be the most highly educated unless we really redesign our strategy for R&D, our strategy for what we're doing in K-12, our strategy for early learning, and the way we do business in higher education. So we really need to do a lot of rethinking, and we don't have a heck of a whole lot of time. We're losing ground. So I'll give you a few statistics about why I say we're losing ground and what we're doing about it for our part. But we also need to understand that we are a country of 50 states, and we create what we see. So, if you look at the K-12, Peter Smith is laughing in the audience. If you look at the K-12, what we've created in terms of expectations, the meaning of a high school diploma, right? We all went to high school. How many of us got high school diplomas? Just raise your, okay. Got an educated, great. Congratulations. Today, when you have high school exit standards based on 10th grade reading and 8th grade mathematics, and you say students are ready, and that's what a high school diploma is, that's a disservice to the future of this country. So I'm very glad, and if you've been reading about Race to the Top, and if you've been going out to achieve.org, which are the scholars and the governors and the people in K-12 who are redesigning what those standards ought to be for us going forward, you'll see the release of language and math standards for America that are going to ramp up the expectations for high school graduation by about 25%. So that's a really good thing. Crazy people, workaholics like me, go out to look at what we're doing in 12th grade math in China. And, I'm so OCD that I compare, 12th grade math in China standards with 12th grade math in any one of our 50 states, and you see a real difference. You see an embedding of computer science, you see an embedding of statistics, and this is in the math curriculum, and you see a lot of calculus, and you see a high level of expectation, which then when you go back and think, what can you do at the federal level and at the state level and at the local level to become competitive, we have lost ground, and we've got to turn that around. So I really have to applaud all the work that's going on, and we can't, by law, call it a national standard. We have to, there's legislation that restricts the government from doing a lot of things that would be in the national interest for a lot of reasons, good and bad. And so you really have to sort of delve down. I'm, 6 months into this world realizing what we can and can't, what we do and don't have authority to move ahead. But when it comes back to the kind of expectations that the American public have for our country, we have got to leverage the resources that we have. At this conference is about technology and consumer electronics. Leverage all of those resources to get us to, in the short run, the 2020 goal, but in the long run, build the capacity starting with early learning so we don't have 25, 30% of the kids not ready for kindergarten And going forward, by the time they're at fourth grade reading, we've got, a third of the kids not reading at fourth grade level, third or fourth grade level. So we just have a tremendous amount to do there. And we've got some exciting roads ahead of us with these new technologies. We've got to close the digital divide. I'd hope we can make a huge start on that in this next decade as part of the President's 2020 goal. But we also need to use the technologies to really make our students digitally literate. Many of them are already there. They're way beyond a lot of us in this room.